hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm so accustomed to speaking so loudly. Welcome. It is so wonderful to see all of you. I'm Jodina. I'm one of the faculty with FJUMP, Film, Journalism, and Media Production. And before I say anything more, I just want to mention that some of our other faculty are in the house today. We have Cy Kuchenbaker over here. Has anybody taken a class with Cy? Let's give Cy, you know how wonderful he is. Bob Sly in the back. Who's had a class with Bob? Thank you guys for being here. This is the first PodFest, so it's brand new. We're seeing where it's going to go. We have some exciting speakers that we're going to be introducing in just a bit, but I want to welcome all of you, and after the presentation, if you have ideas where you think we can take this for following years, I want to hear from you, okay? Or you want to get involved, I want to hear from you too. We have different speakers, and actually basically each speaker will have 20 minutes, and then after everyone presents, then we're going to have an open Q&A. So as people are speaking, make sure you think of your questions, and we'll save it toward the end so that we can have a big open kind of panel discussion. But for right now, I'm going to turn things over to our illustrious Dean, Andy, to welcome officially PodFest 2024.
So I have 20 minutes, you said, right? No, I'm not going to take all that time because it's not very interesting. My name is Bob Sly, and I'm sorry, that's my doppelganger out there. No, I'm Andy McNeil, and I have been mistaken for Bob many times on campus. And I've told students, I've told students, yeah, go ahead and put that in your project, it's no problem. I'll give you a good grade on that. No, but I'm very, very excited. Jodina came here about the same time I started as full-time. I know you've been here before that, and had all these ideas, and we were trying to hold her back a little bit to get her feet on the ground, as a full-time faculty member, because it's different than being a part-timer. But we're so happy because yet another professional from the field to come in and do their wonders with our students. Our president even came and asked, hey, what can we do to do more for our students and connect them to the community and connect them to the other things going on campus. And here is just yet another of many projects that Jodina took up, the PodFest, and this is the inaugural of what we're hoping to be a yearly thing. It's great to see so many community members that are also out in the field and that are doing great things. And I'm glad that you're here to let our students know about what is available for them out there and how they can do their own work and get it on the air. So thank you again for coming. Very excited. I don't get to stay the whole time, just the 20 minutes that I've been afforded. But enjoy the day and enjoy all the experts that you're going to be listening to.
And you're going to turn it over to Seth.
Oh yeah, so I'm going to turn it over to.
Thank you. How are we doing today?
Great.
Woo! I hate microphones. Y'all can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Sweet. So my introduction today. Her name is Stacy Lauren, and she is the founder of the Do the Thing movement. She's a TEDx speaker, charity auctioneer. She's helped hundreds of people launch their podcasts, many of which have reached over 100 episodes. Stacy has a gift of getting people to get out of overthinking and perfectionism and into momentum, get the swing of things. We're so excited to have her speak with you about how you can start your podcast today using her actionable framework. Now let's give a warm welcome to the one and only Stacy Lauren.
Thank you so much. Hey everyone. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. This is amazing. First of all, do like a yay us. Yes. You guys could be at the beach, you could be gaming, you could be anywhere, but you're here wanting to start a podcast. Raise your hand if you are wanting to start a podcast. Okay. So can I give you my, immediately before we even start, can I just tell you the number one thing that's going to help you start your podcast today or tomorrow?
Here.
If I tell it to you and you're like, oh, that makes sense, will you say, okay, maybe I'll consider that? Okay, this is the thing I noticed. When I helped hundreds of people start podcasts, I did this 5-week challenge. Hundreds of people, from people in their 20s, 30s, 70s, people that had no experience with tech. The thing that freed them all was I just said, let's just do a practice podcast. Let's see if you like it. Just do 10 episodes. You don't even have to publish it. So what do you guys think about a practice podcast? Yeah? And what's great about podcasting is it's free. There's a platform I use, it's called Callcast. It's a free platform. It's very easy to use. And you get to just put your episodes on there without ever having to hit publish if you don't want to. So is it okay with you if I kind of talk to you first about what I love about podcasting, and then I'll kind of give you some really specific things that will help you get started? Okay, cool. So I love podcasting. Number one, it's who I get to meet. I have met some of the coolest people because I have a podcast. I'm actually an introvert by nature, and so it's hard for me sometimes to even go out and socialize. And even Seth has been amazing here, making me feel comfortable, because it is hard for me with social interactions. But as far as podcasting, it gives you a reason to talk to people. And when I have someone on my podcast, I don't know, I turn into podcast Daisy. It just turns into the zone where it's this really intentional time of just getting to know someone in a different way and with a more meaningful interaction. And so that's the number one thing I love about podcasting. The other thing is, I don't want to say it feels like therapy, but it actually kind of does feel like therapy, because you're able to talk, and get your voice out and activated. And you're not you get out of your head really quickly, because you don't really even have time to think about what you're going to say, because you're just with another person and you're asking them questions and they're answering them, and then the conversation just starts from there. And so that's another thing that I love. And so what's great about that is you basically have a tool that you get to use for whatever you want. So if you think about it, with a podcast, if you look at all the TEDx talks that are out there, a large percentage of them are coming from a podcast. So that's the other thing that I got from my podcast, was my TEDx talk, because it helped me by interviewing people. I actually dissected a formula for how people do the thing. And so I was basically interviewing people. I was starting to identify the patterns of what helped people achieve their goals. And as I started dissecting these patterns, I got to explore it with each person even more on a deeper level. And so that's where a lot of TEDx talks come from, and really people that are on these heart-centered missions, is the more people you talk to, the more you get to understand human psychology. Are there any psychology professors in the house? Okay, so human psychology from a really deep level, because you're starting to notice the patterns that people have. And so when I started though, so this is what I really wanted to talk to you guys about, because I'm sure today you're gonna learn so much great advice, so much great advice. I don't know exactly what's on the lineup, but I'm imagining it's maybe editing and intros and outros and all these things. And so what I wanna make sure you guys know is everything that you're gonna learn today is so valuable and so great, but as far as getting started, it's just today, when you're done with the seminar that we're doing today, if you just hit record on your phone, on your voice note, and you just say, hey, this is the podcast I'm thinking of starting. And I was talking to Erica earlier, and it was what would be the name of my podcast, right? And so that would be the best first kind of episode or recording that you would do, is just start saying, if I was gonna have a podcast, what would the name of the podcast be? And so that helps you start to identify what you're wanting to do, right? Because that's where I think the majority of people get stuck, isn't actually the name of what their podcast is. But you guys, it doesn't matter what the name is, because you get to change it 55 times. It doesn't matter. There's no podcast law. That's the other thing that I love, is you get to start a podcast, and if you don't like the name, you get to change it. And so what's great about you actually starting to identify the name is you're starting to ask yourself, like, what do I even want from this podcast? Like, who do I want to talk to? And you're starting to dream, and you're like getting your thoughts out of your head, which is the biggest thing. And so I'm going to show you guys, I have this comfort circle framework that I do with people. This is the other thing that I love to show people is, so which one do I want to show you? I'll show you first. Yeah, I'll show you this one. So for example, I give people dares. That's what I use. I do these challenges. I've had thousands of people do the challenges. Starting a podcast was one of my favorite challenges. But basically, let's say you just even asked yourself a question, like, what is something I have done recently that I'm proud of? You could actually record something. Does anyone want to share? I feel like I want to ask a question. Anyone want to share? What is something you've done recently that you're proud of? Does anyone want to volunteer? Any brave souls? Yay! Yes.
Yesterday I was having a bad day, and then I think at the end of the day I was like, okay, it was a bad day, but let's think about something positive that happened in the day, because like it can't be every moment in that day was bad. And I forced myself to think about 3 positive things that happened in the day, and then I felt better.
Oh, so good. You guys want to give her a round of applause? So, does anyone else open up to being a volunteer? Oh, yay. Okay. So, do you mind coming down for a moment? Is that okay? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So she just did the first circle, which is record, right? And now, do you mind asking, what's your name?
Jamie.
Jamie. Nice to meet you. What is your name?
Zen.
Okay, cool. Do you mind asking?
Zen.
Do you mind asking Jamie the question? What is something she's done recently that she's proud of?
Hi, Jamie. Tell us something you've done recently that you're proud of.
Can I go back as early as an hour ago?
Please.
I was working on an article that I'm writing and using a research paper. And one of the sources that they quoted in this research paper was an article I'd written last year. That made me feel very proud.
Questions for her based on that?
Yes. What was the article about?
The article is about the links between your home and your health and how this has become a huge real estate trend. Looking at things like resilience, we've all seen the wildfires that have destroyed thousands of homes. We've seen hurricanes cause flooding, and that's part of the equation too. So I always look at current and upcoming trends that tie into all of that.
Oh, that's great insight. So good. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. You guys are incredible. Do you guys see? So the next comfort circle is you could record with someone you know. Now, technically, I don't know if you guys know each other, but we're pretending you do for this purpose. But do you see how that's a podcast interview? Do you see? Like, we literally just did a podcast interview. Had I pushed on record, that could be something you could publish on your podcast. And did you see how she didn't even have to know what the questions were beforehand? The conversation immediately brought up what it was. Are you guys seeing? It's so fun because you get to experiment with life and people and in a really connecting relational way. And so the next comfort circle is you record by yourself and then you record with someone you know. So when you start your podcast, wherever your comfort circle is, you start. So if you feel more comfortable just recording on your own, then you record on your own. And one of my favorite things, it's a prompt, basically. It's just what is my biggest dream? And then I just start talking, right? Or even reflect. You could even reflect on this experience while you're here. This could be a great podcast episode. For me, I'm activated by people, and so it's hard for me to record by myself unless I'm going live in my community. I have a Facebook group, but I actually do interviews more, and that would be which is what this one is. And then you also have another circle, which is with someone that you're in a shared experience. I should probably have had a writer. We'll just pretend. Shared experience. So this is where when I started, let me talk through this for a minute. I have over, I think, 350 episodes now, and it comes from not a checklist or a plan. It comes from the people that I meet that I want to get to know more. Does that make sense? And so And so like, for example, when I started, I was like interviewing people that I had gone to trainings with. Maybe I went to like a retreat with somebody. What else did I do? There were like friends and people that I knew, right? And then eventually I actually like moved forward and like I went kayaking in this really cool place in like LA. So I'm trying to remember exactly where it was, but anyway, I interviewed the kayak instructor. I went to a hot air balloon ride and I interviewed the hot air balloon ride guy. Does that make sense? So I started to interview people that were outside. I actually also interviewed people that were in my Uber. I would take an Uber and I actually interviewed people that way too. Until eventually, we go outside the circle and then you say people like that you don't know, you've never met, right? And I have a YouTube channel, Let's Do the Thing Formula. I'm on Instagram there too, and you'll see I have street interviews where I like interviewing people on the street. I've traveled the world with my daughter. We've gone to Paris and London and New York. I feel like there was somewhere out Italy. And then we just like interviewing people in really cool spots, and that's been something that I also can put on my podcast. So it's like a very freeing thing when you get to see that everything's open to you and you get to meet all the people that you want to meet. And so that's kind of like the idea of the comfort circle. I want to hear, is anyone feeling any resistance to anything that I've said so far? Because I want to work through that. Is there anything that you're like, oh, well, this won't work for me because of this, or I need to know what I'm going to say first? Is there anything? Oh, yes.
So do you put those individual discussions that you have with someone into one podcast, or do you save them up for a common theme? Or?
Yeah, I love this question. Thank you. So here's the thing. When I start, so everyone else here I think is going to probably help you with like more like this is how you monetize and this is how you do all this stuff, right? I'm getting you started in momentum. So the question is whatever you're able to do. So if it makes, because there's no podcast rules, right? So technically you could take the 5-minute recording and that could be a separate podcast that you put in and you upload it that way, or you could group them together with all the things. And here's the question that I always want you guys to ask yourself in the beginning while you're getting your momentum up is, what is the easiest way for me to get this published? And that's what you do, because there's no, you don't want to wait. Here's the thing that you're wanting to podcast about typically is either coming from something that you've walked through in your life that, maybe you're working through or you're on the other side of, or you're wanting to learn something, and the person that needs to hear what you're going to be talking about on the podcast, they actually don't care about your intro, they don't care about your outro, they don't care if it's 3 minutes or 10 minutes, they just need to hear that one thing that's going to make the difference for them that day, right? And so in order for you to have a podcast eventually that's really beautiful and you're getting paid by sponsors and all these things, you have to get started and in momentum. And so I think my best answer to that question is whatever you're able to do. The easiest and the quickest way that you're able to get it up. And then when you guys get to like 30 episodes, then you get to look at it and you get to say, okay, now what's the best way for me to optimize, and now how do I monetize? But I wouldn't think about any of that stuff in the beginning, especially if you're in college. It's such an amazing way for you to use it almost as an education tool, right? And more of an exploration. And so the other thing I'll work you guys through is my formula. So one of the things I did while I was interviewing people is I dissected this formula, right? It's actually an acronym, and it's I'm game. And so I don't know if you guys have something you could write down with, but what you're gonna wanna do when you get home, and feel free to do it now, is the I in I'm game is identify the why. So you wanna ask yourself, why do I wanna start this podcast? What am I looking to get out of it? What is the goal that I wanna achieve, right? And really tap in deep into like the reason why. And you guys have probably seen Simon Sinek, he has a TED Talk about this. The power of the why is really powerful. And then the M in I'm game is mindset. And so here's the next question, is you're gonna ask yourself, what are my excuses? And how will I overcome those excuses? So here's an example. When I was in college, I sold books door to door. And one of the things that they had us do before we sold books was they said, okay, before you go out, I want you to think of all of the things that are going to get in your way when you're out selling books, right? And so what is that? Rain, dogs, maybe not the right person, all those things. So we had to pre-decide what was going to get in our way before we ever went out there. And so that's the same thing, because what happens is when you're burning energy in the moment of you saying you don't want to do something, then it's hard for you to overcome it. And so the whole idea of this is to figure out, okay, what are my excuses with starting the podcast? And then how will I be able to overcome it? The biggest excuse I've seen is like, I don't like my voice, or what am I going to say, or what if people don't like it? And then go through and say, okay, how am I going to overcome that? Okay, so if it's what are people going to say, then don't publish it right away, right? That would be something. If it's I don't have time, then you want to think about how you can overcome the time. Like, okay, maybe like my very first episode, which I do encourage everyone to listen to my first episode, it's in my car and it's only a 4-minute episode. That was how I actually was able to do my first episode. And so I would just encourage you to just be able to take those little steps. And so that's the M. And then the G in I'm Game is a goal. So just make little goals for yourself every day. So what I did in the podcast challenge was I just had people hit record every day, no matter what, whether you publish it or not. And that's the other thing I want you guys to do, is just like release the idea that anyone ever has to hear it, and then you get to decide after you record it if it's something you ever want to put out there. And then the A in Game is accountability, and that's like what's so great is you guys are here. This is what my TEDx talk was about, actually, which is like being with people who have the same goal as you, that want the same thing. And so like grab a buddy before you guys leave and say, hey, do you want to do this together, right? So it's really holding yourself accountable. And then the M is my people, and that's what you guys are. It's different than like-minded people. Like-minded people are like, like supportive friends and encouraging friends. My people are people that have the same goal as you, they want the same thing, and you're going through the same struggles. And so really gather around together. And then the E is educate, and that's when you're learning what you guys are here today, learning from each other and really being able to listen to podcasts and, seeing what things are. But the biggest thing is, especially if you guys know each other outside of here, is educating others. So as soon as you learn something or you do something, share it with someone. And so that's what that is. How are we doing? Good? 2 minutes left. Okay, cool.
You can take a couple.
Oh, okay.
Take a couple more, like 4 minutes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so that's the formula. But the biggest thing is that I love doing are these comfort circles. And I'll show you one more comfort circle, and then we'll close it out. If anything I said was too overwhelming, this is the other thing you could do, is you just start with typing. It's all about the prompt, right? So whatever the prompt is. So when I said the prompt is like, what is something you've done recently that you're proud of, or reflect on something? So typing is one of the circles. Audio record is another one. And then video is another. And then I have another one for my Facebook group, but that's like go live. But basically in my podcast, my first 80 episodes, I had no camera on. I wasn't ready to be visible. And if you look at my podcast image, I don't even have my face on there. And so like I still didn't want to be like showing up, right? It wasn't until my TEDx talk was when I was like, okay, I guess I'm doing this, right? But it took me a while to get to that point. And so I had no video for the first 80 episodes. If I needed to have video, I wouldn't have 350 episodes right now. So that's the whole idea of what I was saying earlier, is like really kind of say, okay, what's going to get me to just move and do the thing? It's going to be like maybe no video, right? And so meeting yourself where you are. So I just wanted to like have this get ingrained in you, because as you're deciding what your podcast is, just do a practice podcast, get it started, see if you even like it. Pick a name that you like, use your name, have the podcast be your name, and then decide from there. So, all right, you guys, so do the thing. Don't wait for opportunity. Create it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now remember, after all of our presenters, we're going to have a panel. Hi, everybody that's walking in, all these faces. That's wonderful to see you all. So nice. Oh, and Erica, this will be here in a couple of minutes.
So, upcoming is going to be KPBS Port of Entry. This is a podcast about border people who often inhabit this in-between space created by the separation and collision of two cultures. These are stories of love, hope, struggle, and survival. So, Port of Entry, KPBS.
Hello, folks.
Oh, June is going to introduce the finest as well, since they're going to be.
Quick little blurb for everyone. Apologies. Good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to introduce our next group of guest speakers. This podcast is about art and movements redefining culture in San Diego by introducing you to the artists, advocates, and disruptors making it happen. Ladies and gentlemen from KPBS Public Media, please welcome the finest.
Yay!
How's it going, guys?
Great.
Here, let's rip that station. What? Yeah, you drive. All right. Slideshow.
Here we go.
All right, how's it going, guys? Sorry about that slide. I had to add that a little bit. So our friends from just the finest some people have time. Guys, we are part of KPBS, the public media station from San Diego. Proudly supported by public media. So we're here to talk about our podcast or our products. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start. We have about 2 minutes each. So we'll talk about basically what is Port of Entry, how we build an episode, then the finalists will take it up and talk about their newest project that just premiered a couple weeks ago, and then how to pitch your project to KPBS, right? So really quick, I just want to do a little bit of clarification about what types of podcasts can you do. There's 3 types of podcasts you can do. The first one is that everybody's familiar with. It's one dominated by comedians, shoot the shit, chit chat. That's Joe Rogan, Matt Friends. What else? All those popular podcasts that are making the big bucks, basically. The other ones are the more serious interview type of podcasts, the talk shows. You sit down, you interview, you have maybe debates. They're more newsy oriented and whatnot. And the last are storytelling podcasts, which is the podcast we try to do. And the difference between these is that they're themes and elements of sound design. So the storytelling is not just about what we write, but how we present the story and what you hear. In film, you do that by what you present in B-roll and what you get to see in the camera and what the DP wants to show you. Director of photography, sorry. So, Port of Entry. Let me pass. This is our team. Ana Lilienthal, the host right here. And Natalie Gonzalez. I am the writing producer of the show. Alan Villalobos is the sound designer and video producer. And Ima Lima Manuel is our interim editor. She couldn't be here today. Let me pass the mic to Alan and Natalie to talk about the show.
Hola, hola, ¿cómo estamos? Ladies first.
No, you start. You started the podcast, so you start.
Has anyone here heard Port of Entry? No, you got some? I encourage you all to listen to it. It's a show, it started about 5 years ago, about specifically during a time, I mean, the border has always been a big issue. I think San Diego a lot of the times forgets that it's a border town, but Tijuana, you can't forget that. It's right up in your face. So it started, obviously, it caught a lot of headlines a couple of years ago when the first time Donald Trump was being elected, and there was a lot of talk about immigration and the border. And we just wanted to tell true personal stories beyond the headlines of what it's like to actually live here. People don't really understand how much flow there is. People crossing for school, for medical, to Tijuana, for literally infinite reasons. There's so many stories. And we wanted to take people into the heart of that to really understand what it's like to live between two cultures, because at the end of the day, whether you agree with borders or not, they're made up by someone's mind. They're not real. You know, they can just as easily go as they're here today, gone tomorrow. Throughout history, no border has ever stayed the same. So it's this idea that we can cleanly separate two cultures is kind of a farce. So we wanted to tell stories about that, what it's like to actually live here and cross the border for whatever reason you might be crossing.
No, so for me, I don't like microphones, but for me, I was born and raised in Tijuana. I've been living in Tijuana my whole life. I'm still there. And I guess I just grew up listening to horrible stories about my home, like horrible stories about drug cartels and killings and human trafficking and drug trafficking. And I was like, wait, like I'm not saying it's not happening. I'm not trying to be fake positive, but I was like, well, like I go to school and I have friends and I have family and I hang out and I do art. I'm an artist. Like that's not the only thing that's happening. Just like in San Diego, homelessness, it's not the only thing happening. So I was like, someone needs to talk about the real stories, not that those other bad stories are not real, but someone needs to talk about the people who are actually living here and tell their stories about hope, survival, resilience, art, culture, everything that it's actually happening in my home. And then Port of Entry happened. And that actually, it started with Alan. It was named Only Here at first, and then they changed it.
Yeah. What else should I tell them?
Tell about this episode in Spanish.
Well, we just recently, I mean, it's hard to have a cross-border podcast where it's only catering to one side. Since the beginning, like Natalie said, it was called Only Here in the beginning. It was a only team. I'm the only surviving member. This is a great team. This is a better team. But yeah, so it started, we always intended to do English and Spanish so that we can, no matter which side you're on, you can listen and understand, maybe improve one language or the other. But recently, we finally got the resources and team members to be able to make that happen. So if you have any family members that don't speak English, we have all the episodes that we do are in Spanish, which obviously takes, as I don't know how many of you make podcasts already or are starting to make podcasts, but it's obviously a lot of more work. You have to, every episode we have to do it essentially twice. Not always with when we go out on the field and do interviews, we don't always necessarily do those twice because you want to catch the spark and the fire and the spontaneity of the conversation. But when we do studio interviews, when we do tracking, like we have to do it all over again in Spanish, and that's just part of the price we're willing to pay to ensure we're really talking to the audience we're like grabbing stories from.
Also, so some of your suggestions do make it to what we have talked about. I'm not quite sure, but before my time, I don't know what stories actually Kinsey had this shut her way that actually made it. But the latest one was Design Comes to Town. I don't know if you heard, but it was the World Design Capital last year. Yeah, last year. And that was a suggestion that was made to us during the Producers Club meeting. And so we said, hey, this is happening next year. You guys doing anything about it? Well, I don't know, maybe we should. And so then we talked about to a couple people we know, and then we accessed a couple sources, and then we talked about the Tijuana team who put their part of the portfolio to get it in to compete. And lo and behold, Tijuana and San Diego were the first binational city to make it. So we kind of highlighted that in that story. So yeah, your input, your questions, your suggestions do make it. And when they do, we just try to bundle them into themes and then talk about them. And say if it's race, say if it's gender, say if it's food, migration. So we just put them together and try to make sense of it and ask different questions in that sense. And make it a season. Okay, so how is an episode made? So the first part of an episode is made basically it's just as Stacy said, as she mentioned, it's just having that idea and just writing about it. Maybe talk about it, record yourself about it, and then develop the concept a bit more, put a little bit of structure, and if you took an English class or a writing class, it's a little bit like essay writing, basically. Or putting a journal entry. You try to come up with an argument and a source, and then you write about it, and then you just record. So it's a idea and a concept, and you research, you contact your sources. You do a little pre-interview. You talk, hey, I'm interested in doing this. Are you interested in maybe participating? Can I talk to you? Having that sort of one-on-one, being tactful with your source, it's a big thing as well. You just can't barge and say, I want to interview, be my podcast. So having some, being tactful with your sources. Also the 6 W's, does everybody know what the 6 W's are in journalism? Who, what, where, why, and how. Well, that's Mitch, right? For the It hasn't. So yeah, and then when you talk to your sources, you start to think about developing questions of how can I orient this story? How can I write this? You develop the questions, then you write the questions, and then what I do, because we're not a gotcha podcast, we're not a cat caught. I preempt the source to say, hey, I'm going to ask you about this, reflect on this, whatever you want to share. But I will encourage you to talk about this because I want you to mention this. It'll be great. Because some people just are willing to talk about certain things in private, but they don't want to do it officially on the record. And then you get to write the script. And so you write the script, and whatever material that you got, then you integrate into the script. And I'm going to pass the mic to Adrian, who is our sound designer, to tell you about the technical part of this, of putting an episode together.
Hi everyone, how are you guys doing? My name is Adrian Villalobos. I'm the sound designer for Port of Entry, technical producer. I'm going to speak a little bit about kind of audio and what you guys would do and how that process goes into making an episode, right? So as Julio mentioned, you're going to be doing a lot of pre-production, which includes, it just depends on the type of podcast you're looking for, right? Whether it's an interview style podcast, how are you going to set it up? Do you have a proper room to record in? Can you guys, as Stacey mentioned, just record, right? Just if you want to do that, find the proper space to do it in. If you're doing something more intricate, like what we do at Port of Entry, more narrative style, what sounds are you collecting, right? I just recently did a kind of workshop earlier also with some college students, and we give an example. You're going to record some soccer players. What would you record when you're there? Like, think ahead of what ambience or sounds or things you can use to mix into your podcast. So if you're at a soccer game, you record the fans cheering. You record the cars pulling up to the stadium. You record, grab anything and everything, because you potentially don't know when you would use that in the episode, just to have, right? As an audio engineer, a sound designer, you want to have every piece of audio available to you, right? To put together an episode. After doing that, that's mostly pre-production. Within the production, you work with your host, you work with yourself to get proper levels to record yourself, When we do an episode, we do it narrative style, so we record interviews, and then afterwards you go ahead and record in a booth. We have Alan and Natalie come in, they record. Having that set up, making sure you have good levels, making sure things are properly mixed. And then during that, you start to sound design, right? Which is pretty much what it says. You design the kind of space or the atmosphere of the episode. You start layering things. You grab music, right? But make sure you use copyright-free music, or you make sure you have the right licenses. So doing a little bit of research beforehand, grabbing the right resources. If you're missing something, maybe grabbing some sound effects, grabbing these certain things to help build what you want to say. And kind of, you're basically, for the most part, there's no video aspect, right? So you want to be the kind of the eyes and the ears of the listener and kind of describe what's going on. Have your host kind of describe the scenery or use these sounds to your advantage to build, to kind of create this larger than life thing. Then you do your retracts and your rewrites, it's just it's like writing an essay. You do your first draft, your second draft, and just make sure you kind of refine everything. Make sure it's nice and tight, You don't want to overwhelm people with too much information. Keep things brief if you have to. And then sound design mastering, as I mentioned, you design it, and then mastering process. It gets a little bit more technical, but basically just making sure it's up to spec, make sure it sounds good, you're not clipping, things like that, and you publish it. So I think that's kind of the main process in kind of a nutshell of what I do. If I were to give any advice, just collect your sounds. Play around with simple things as like the microphone on your iPhone, right? You can do these things very simply, very cheaply, and just use your resources. I learned through YouTube. I learned through watching other people. Just make sure you grab the right sources and the right facts, so you're not doing things kind of intuitively, and make your job a lot easier.
So we just want to note number 7. Sometimes what you write isn't sounding the way you want it. So maybe it's a little give and take about maybe rewrite to the sound, or maybe get some sound to fit what you wrote. And so it's this little dance between to make it sound crisp and immersive as much as you can. So I'm going to follow, and I think I'm going to pass it to, please look forward with Port of Entry. So we are looking for a part-time script editor. Fortunately, our editor is making some serious bucks. Her side hustle became her main hustle, and she had to resign. So we are looking for a part-time editor, script editor. If you know anybody, if you want to shoot your shot, go ahead. Bilingual editor, thank you. We're also going to start featuring Port of Entry Shorts video features. So these are basically
just video capsules of what we do. So kind of a little more documentary style, more Vice style whatsoever. So we finally thought of doing the video section of our podcast just to see how it feels to have a video element to the audio. We have another presentation in Tijuana, May 2nd, Tijuana Design Week. You guys all have been invited. A small presentation about basically the same topic. And a live event in the fall. Last year, we had a live event, our first live event, or our first-ish live event, in which we track out to do some stuff live with some guests. We will have another one this fall as well. And let me pass the mic to the folks from the finest, Julia and Anthony.
I already see this really. Hey, I'm Julia. And we just launched this podcast April 3rd. So brand new, do the thing, right? We are a podcast about people, art, and movements that are redefining culture in San Diego. And this is something we pitched for a long time as like a quote arts podcast. But we wanted to think a little bit outside the box there, and not just have it be like a podcast about a theater performance that's coming up. To get out of that like upcoming event approach to thinking about art and culture in San Diego and like really broaden what culture is. So we are looking to tell great stories and to just connect people listening to this podcast with their region and with the people who live here. And I'm going to interview Anthony here on stage. Anthony's our producer. Anthony, tell us what you think makes a great story. What do you look for in a story?
Okay. I think, podcasts, Julio went through the types of podcasts. There's shooting the shit podcasts, you're just having a conversation, there's interviews. But when you have a narrative podcast, documentary style, which we do multi-format with the finest, but we do a lot of documentary style. Great stories are essential. I think that's really the foundation and the backbone. And like what makes a great story is like been the same for like thousands of years. From mythology to the Bible to Star Wars. And it's very interesting to study that. I've done that. But yeah, it's really just great characters that experience challenges. They need to be resilient. They need to solve a problem. They overcome something and they change. That's the basics. And I think I will mention like this phrase in quotes here, a podcast about the people, art, and movements redefining culture in San Diego. Since you all are interested in starting podcasts, I've started a few, probably like, maybe 7 or so at this point. But one of the best piece of advice that I always follow that I got from this guy, Eric Newsom, who wrote a very good book about podcasts, who's working at other places, is to create a 10-word mission statement for your podcast before you start and have that defined and always refer back to it. And that will keep you from drifting off into other places which can happen. So that's ours. We cheated. It's probably 12 words.
Yeah, right. We're counting San Diego's longer.
Yeah.
I'm going to move the slide so you can't count. Maybe let's talk a little bit about some of the episodes that we have finished so far. Only a couple of these have aired. We talked to a local tea shop about their love story and their approach to handling this wildly viral success that they had and what they changed about the business. It was just a really great story, and to listen to it from their mouths and hear them tell each other the story was really great. We also had a music episode. We're doing a little series of music episodes where we talked to a local musician about making a living, about the economy, about how can you survive in an industry that has always been notoriously difficult, but more so now with streaming. You want to take a couple?
Sure. And then we had the San Diego Poets Laureate, which is an official government position, like an official poet. So we talked about just like what it's like to be a quote government artist, which is interesting, and then also just poetry, and just people are really intimidated by poetry and why that is and why it's cool. Another musician, like Julie said, we're doing a series. Went pretty deep into Spotify. We talked to a journalist that wrote a book about Spotify. We talked to an artist who paints their dreams, a surrealist artist who had sleep apnea, got a CPAP machine, and then lost her dreams. So she lost her subject of her art and it's about how she tried to get her dreams back. And then also one about the San Diego Reader, which is the last alt weekly that remains here. So we have a fairly broad kind of approach to arts and culture. We had a video, but it's.
Do you think it's
requested.
gonna?
Oh yeah, just quick. Maybe it'll send.
We can come back to this while you.
You're back.
We just have a clip from one of our episodes with the musician. Yeah. Or if you go back.
We can move on to the next slide. I can't do hands at once. I'm gonna log in. Georgina.
That's fine.
Okay.
But I will take everything down.
Not now.
You sign up as a member as well while you're at it too?
We'll find it. There you go. Now you know how to navigate PBS's Instagram page. So, we don't have audio, do we? Just like.
With the news of the killings of several of my brothers and sisters, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor.
We're gonna start over.
Ready?
Yeah, I was writing an EP in 2020. I needed an outlet for a lot of the overwhelming emotions I was experiencing with the news of the killings of several of my brothers and sisters, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. And so I started making stuff in the garage, and I was up until 3 a.m. every night, kind of a mix between yelling at myself, being very frustrated, crying because of the pain of what I was trying to express. And then my wife came into the garage, and I literally just said the first lines of the song to her out loud. Aren't you tired of waking up to the news? Those Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday blues. I said it just like that. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday blues. I mean, that was a pivotal point, I think, in culture as well, where, I thought that, like, whatever bleeds leads. If you weren't hooked by that machine, then you certainly were in that time. And so I was just saying, I'm like, it's exhausting. You can know in a way that leads you to action, but I think most of that is just extremely paralyzing. That history repeats itself, when the belly's rising. And that's why I was like, I must do something. I'm gonna write some songs, and it felt so insignificant, but my faith kind of gives me opportunities to be in spaces that I probably wouldn't decide to go to. And I'll say, like, I've been able to sing about police brutality in front of people wearing very stylish red hats.
Yeah.
And have those people come up to me, tears in their eyes, and say, I I've never been affected by a story like this in this life. Yeah.
That is Shua.
Slideshow.
Slideshow. I spy holding the mic, talking, chewing gum. So yeah, coming up, we have a couple more stories about like things that are somewhat, off the beaten path in terms of art and culture. There's risograph printing, which we have a huge scene for in San Diego, like a DIY art scene. We're talking about birding, prison art and book programs, food criticism and the changing landscape there with like food reviews and what's happening with influencers. So yeah, if you have feedback or any questions, you can get in touch with us at kpbs.org/define us, or you can send us an email, defineus@kpbs.org.
Thank you, Anthony and Julia. All right, let me talk about a little program KPBS has called Explore. So this is the window that KPBS has to tap into the talent of the county, of the region, I should say, because people from both sides of the borders are welcome to apply. Thank you. So KPBS focuses on enhancing the local content and see what the talent's out there. They launched a project in 2012. And they want to make sure, they want to see what's out there, what talent is there. And so, to our surprise, there is a lot out there. And so, there's a call for projects every 2 years, and it's basically where you propose what your idea is, and if KPBS likes it, they fund you, they give you seed money, and you become partners with KPBS and co-producers, basically. So you have deliverables to give, and they give you money to do it. Right? So it starts on July 1st. So if you have an idea that kind of seems a little bit like what we do, or maybe it's something in TV or documentary or film as well, then you can definitely propose it. There's situations in which KPBS does not go into no more food shows. I can just don't send anything with food. It gets definitely up. Yes, sir.
Yeah, speaking of which, who's the gatekeeper when it comes to, if everybody here is submitting, who's actually making the decisions? Is it a party? Is it one individual? I know in the past it was John Decker.
Yeah.
But can you tell us about that?
So John Decker is not with KPBS anymore.
I hear that, yeah.
And so, but yes, it is a group of, a committee of 10 folks.
Good to hear.
And so I did not sit on that one last time because I was actually competing in it as well. And that's actually how I got this
I'm glad it's a committee. That's
So yeah, and so there's a committee of people. There's 10 to 12 from TV, from radio, from podcast. Whatever you submit, it will be reviewed, and if we like it, we'll hire you. We'll not hire you. We'll submit. We'll give you some seed money and basically some guidelines, some rules, and then we'll expect you to have. Yes, go ahead.
What kind of experience are they looking for in terms of the people submitting? Are you expected to have a broadcaster or podcasting experience, technical skills? What are the criteria in that regard?
There is no criteria. And so if you have a good idea and you have sort of a craft or a way to tell that story, if it's compelling enough, then KPBS will make sure that you are capable and equipped to do so. Let me give you an example. So one of the submissions that we had on the last round was a project that's coming out that we're working with some high schoolers in Central California, in Imperial Valley. So we got this proposal, and it was about kids, talking about stories about being a kid in Imperial Valley. And some of the topics were like, yes. And so we fast-tracked that project and just gave it life of its own, as well, and just gave it the immediate okay, because it's something that was rare, that was energetic, and that was different. And so if you have something like that stands out and just it's compelling, then you'll get that sort of fast track there. But for all the other projects, send them in, You'll see the committee will review it. But yeah, let me just tell you, no more food shows. No more food shows. Any other questions? Okay, so these are challenging times for public media. I know you're all well aware of this. The stories that we tell would not be possible without basically the public support, grant support. So these are, if you value what we do, share our stories, drop a like. If you can, drop a buck or two. I mean, but if you can't, just let your representatives know that you appreciate this, basically. So some of the stories that we tell, pretty much don't get any airtime. I mean, who the fuck's gonna talk about, kids who cross the border, or they're struggling? Nobody, right? So we have to give that sort of space, and it has to come from sort of pocket money from those, from the public interest, because they don't get told. They don't make the headlines. So, any other questions? Yes?
May I say one thing?
Of course.
I do believe that when we do something that we believe in, it comes out from our heart, it will pierce others' hearts very easily. It's very important that you don't do it because you want to do it, but because it has a meaning and that it's going to leave an effect and impact on the society. It should be very important to highlight this point.
Yeah.
So not just don't do stories because you want to do these stories, or see what people like. Do some research and see now there are lots of resources that can help us get to know what is may leave an impact on others, and accordingly, and you have to believe in it. If you don't, I don't think it's gonna reach out to others the way it's whenever you believe in it. Really.
Yeah, exactly. If something speaks to you and you love it, just take the risk. Do the thing. Wendy.
You guys are gonna stay around.
Yeah, we'll stick around if you have any more questions.
We will have many more questions for you. I have 20 more questions.
Go for it.
Okay.
Oh, by the way, we have some swag from so. Give anyone a shirt?
Sure.
There you go. I wasn't you ready to go? Okay. What else? There you go. Just look at you. There you go. Right there. You go. Sorry, this one is high. We have some pins on the bottom here. Help yourself.
Don't go anywhere, Chris.
Oh, I'm not.
All right, everybody, join me in welcoming to PodFest Chris Cantori. Chris is a longtime and legendary figure in the San Diego media scene, best known for his work in radio, TV, digital media, and events. A San Diego State University alum, Chris's radio career includes successful stints as host of Cantori in the Mornings at 91X, KPRI, and 100.7 KFMB. In addition to his work in radio, he has contributed content to the Union Tribune, San Diego, and NBC San Diego, Fox 5, and San Diego Magazine. Currently, Chris is the host of the Chris Cantori Show podcast, which features guests ranging from musicians to club owners to politicians, and he also loves to tell us where to eat, all while keeping it local to San Diego. Let's warmly welcome Chris Cantori.
Thank you. When people talk about me, I get really uncomfortable and walk outside. I'm going to sit. That's cool. And all right. Sorry I'm late. I thought it started at 4. It's funny. I don't even smoke weed anymore. Some stuff never goes away. Let's talk. Let's talk podcasting. I host a food show. That was a joke. As far as KPBS is concerned, I love seeing the people up here. I like your Soundgarden shirt. That's a great record. ADD. I have a lot of respect for what a lot of these creators are doing over at KPBS, and I think it's awesome that KPBS has opened the platform for a lot of locals and creators in the community and giving them the resources to create. That doesn't happen a lot, especially in the podcast world. So I wanted to start by commending KPBS's efforts. those who are currently producing content for KPBS. And I was really happy to hear that when it comes to accepting submissions, it is a collective, because a lot of times gatekeepers over media can prevent talent from rising because of a lot of elements that it's not important to get into. But what's important to mention is you're going to find this as a creator, that a lot of people have opinions of you. A lot of people have judgments. And the best advice I can give you is not to give one flying F. And to be true to yourself and not give a shit about the opinions of the gatekeepers, but listen to your audience. You are of service to your audience, not the person that gave you the green light. And I mean, there's some truth. There is, if you're getting paid, you got to satisfy the boss. All right. But never let the boss or the gatekeepers make you feel less than. If you were made to feel less than as a creative, trust me, remove yourself from the environment. Even if it means you're going broke, eating your toenails, remove yourself from the environment. Because protecting your creativity and your mental health, and they go hand in hand, is very important when you go on this journey. Because to be an effective podcaster, broadcaster, you need to believe in yourself, you need to have confidence, and anybody, friends, family, coworkers, bosses, anyone that makes you feel less than, don't listen to them. Trust me. Listen to your heart. Listen to your audience. People say to me, Chris, how did you last decades on an alternative radio station that has flipped morning shows every 4 months for the last 15 years? And I tell them the same thing every time. 2 things. I never forgot that Mexico was right below us, and I embraced Mexican culture in San Diego, going back before it was cool. That's the first thing. The second thing is I put my audience first, ahead of myself, ahead of my boss, ahead of everybody. I always put the audience first. You're of service to your listener. They're giving their time to you. You owe it to them to deliver the best of you. And I went to battle for my audience. If I thought a song was tired, I'd pull it off the air. I don't want to play that because my audience is sick of hearing it. That gets DJs fired. Everybody who's on the air today, they're all yes men and yes women and yes people and yes them and thems. Anyone who used to stand up to authority, they're podcasters now. Anyone who put the audience first are podcasters now. I believe them. And I'm not taking anything away from people who are currently doing and performing. All power to them. But I get asked every day, do I miss being on the radio? I'm just starting with radio stuff now. Not at all. Not at all. I have never looked back. And if I do, I slap myself up the head and say, stop. Because the windshield's a lot bigger than that rear view. And you can look back, but don't stare too long. This is about who you are today, in the present, and what you want to share and put out into the world. So let's talk about that. One of the most overused words, I can't stand it, is authenticity. Because it's so overused and it's been so bastardized. But what's so interesting is, in this world that we live in, authenticity is back. It went from being bastardized and so many people were faking authenticity that made real authenticity come back. And it's brilliant. That's why I stopped podcasting I don't even podcast that much. I produce other people's podcasts more than I podcast myself. And the reason being, I swear to God, is I just got sick of my voice. I just didn't want to hear myself talk anymore. I was just over it. over it. And now if I do, I just do it just to help friends, if they got something they want to say. Otherwise, it's not, I'd rather help you develop your podcast than me putting myself out there anymore. And obviously I'm not afraid to put myself out there. I'm sitting here with you right now. But it's just, it's a process. And it's a process that a lot of people don't understand. And it's a process that people think, oh, what's podcasting? Well, Joe Rogan. No. Joe Rogan's an entertainer. Joe Rogan was on Fear Factor. Joe Rogan was on all these shitty shows. He had a platform and he got into something and the timing was right and he's friggin' huge. But do I consider Joe Rogan a podcaster? No, he's an entertainer to me, and I'm not just, no disrespect. Fuck, the guy's worth $1 gazillion, I'm like gum on the bottom of his shoe. But at the end of the day, that's not what my version of a podcast is, okay? And I know it's great entertainment for some people and for certain demographics, I get that. And that's the case of a lot of these people. But at the end of the day, I truly believe that podcasting is an art, and I believe that there's a lot to it that extends beyond storytelling. It involves storytelling, but I think it starts with the person behind the mic and how you're handling that mic and how you're treating that mic. And as something was said earlier, what's your purpose? Why are you putting this stuff out there? And it's got to come from a healthy place. And when I say a healthy place, I mean you can't get into this being scared and full of fear. And when you get on that mic, you just emote love and some type of energy that is going to connect with your audience, and you're going to try to emote that kind of energy. Sometimes that energy might be negative. I can go on rants all day. But I also know that I'm going to bring it around and give my audience some love. You got to give your audience love. You got to be able to emote. You're going to make them laugh. You're going to make them cry. You're going to make them pissed off. But you don't want anyone leaving angry. That's like going to bed angry. That sucks. Who wants to be that person? I don't know. Maybe you do. That's cool too. But I honestly know what I listen to when it comes to podcasts. And I want to hear somebody who's a voice of authority and actually believes what's coming out of their mouths, not trying to play a character. And that character can be, I'm going to be authentic today. No. You don't tell yourself you're going to be authentic. You're just authentic or you're not. And if you're thinking about what's coming out of your mouth before you're saying it, or you're following a script, that's a format, I get it, but that's also a book on tape. It's an audio book. I want authenticity. I want to feel. I want to get pissed off. I want to cry. I want to laugh. I want to learn something. And that's the stuff that I ask myself if I do podcast. If I was sitting on the other side, what would I want to hear? And how do I want to be communicated to? And when it comes to the structure of a podcast, I was thinking about this when I was sitting over there. It's like, I don't even know what to say. The 3-act structure really works well for me, which is something that, because I was a screenwriting major at State, I didn't do anything with it. I've never written a screenplay. But I've had a lot of great ideas. But it's a 3-act structure. You start with your intro. You hook them in. What's going on? First act. You set it up. Then there's a transitional period. Every movie runs like this, by the way. It's a full arc. First act, the introduction, middle act, act 2, that's the meat of your podcast. You set it up, now you're delivering the meat, and then the third act is the conclusion, the running of the gauntlet. This is where you're going for. Maybe there's a surprise, maybe there's a twist, maybe you were pissed off and now you're happy. It was kind of like what Dude was saying earlier about that character arc, because someone was saying that as it relates to storytelling. Same thing. First act, second act, third act. But don't start the first act unless you know what the third act is. And, I was on the radio for 25 years, and when I would never crack the mic without knowing what my ending was going to be. I knew how I was getting out before I got in. So that act is where the beauty can come in, because you're friggin' rolling. Because you know you've got in your back pocket, you know how you're getting the hell out of this. So you can operate more fearless. Because that's a big thing. When we get stuck in our head, that's why I focus on the love thing so much. And I'm not saying you gotta do a friggin' rom-com podcast or some dating podcast. No. I'm just saying the opposite of love is fear. And it's scary putting yourself out there. It's scary talking into a mic. It's scary sharing opinions. So just make sure it's coming from a loving place and you can conquer that fear. That's why I always say that. So if I'm angry and I'm pissed off at something and I want to rant on something, I also know that it's got to come from a place of love also. And, or if not, you're doing yourself a disservice, your audience a disservice. And at the end of the day, we want to make this world a better place. I believe that of all humans. And why not try to lift people with the power of your voice, or make people think with the power of your voice, or laugh with the power of your voice? And I don't believe you can do that if you're in a fearful, insecure state. And maybe that's why I stopped podcasting at times too, because maybe I didn't think that I was in the best or had the best version of myself to put out there, and was second guessing my own shit. And that's where you become a huckster or a grifter or a salesperson, where you're just selling this thing that's not really you and who you are and what your values and ethics and core and all that stuff is about. And that's why I always go back to that authenticity word, because I do think the word does get misused a lot. And I also think that, and I come from the era of trying to shock people with stuff I said or bits I did. But I look at I don't know, I think that's not the way things work today. Or it's not the type of content I want to put out into the world. And that's why I look at that's why I think that's entertainment. That's a form of entertainment, And does anyone have questions? Maybe I want to answer some questions if you have some questions or opinions. I don't care. I'm starting to sweat.
Chris, we're gonna ask questions on the panel too. But what you just brought up as far as the arc and the three pieces, could you elaborate? I think that's so helpful. The idea that you have an end that you're going to. You always know what your end is.
Yeah, sure. That's it really comes down, and again, it's part of how you build your confidence and kind of your worth while you're putting this shit out there, is knowing your subject, knowing what you're doing, being prepared when you go in there and knowing what you're trying to accomplish. Because I've had seasons where I'm just like, I'm going to fly by the seat of my pants. I can figure this out. And sometimes it works, but most of the time it doesn't. So I do think that's where patient does come in, where you have to know how you are going to present something. And doing the proper research is very important, but I don't like to be over-researched, because then you just start telling a person's story for them. I actually like walking into stuff being ignorant and dumb. I'm like, cool, let me learn something, because I'm going to put myself in the chair of the listener, or the person that's consuming this. And if I was the expert, why would I have, that's the problem that I think a lot of podcasters have, is they want to control the conversation versus listening, because your best questions are to come out of what you're hearing from the person that's you're interviewing, not what you have already planned and have on your sheet of paper. So that's why when it comes to, so case study as far as the 3-act structure bit. I just did a podcast recently with the guy who started Stone Brewing, the beer company here in town, Greg Cook. And he's got some music metal project that he does now. because that's what I guess people who are rich and retired do. And I knew that I was going to sit him down, and knew that everybody who talks to the dude talks about Stone Brewing. And I made it a point, we hit it, but it was such I just didn't spend or invest that much time in the beer talk, and spend more time on who he was as a child. Why are you so arrogant? Why, you had your beer, the arrogant bastard, why? And then I figured it out in 2 seconds. 2 seconds, the oldest story in the book. I was a little kid, bullied to shit, no one would talk to me. I was insecure, friggin' nerd. I'm like, textbook, that guy. But I've known Greg he just texted me, weirdly enough. That's weird. For 30 years, and I always thought, he's some arrogant dick. Like, I'm never friends with that guy. He thinks he's the shit. He ran a beer company, Beer Jesus. I'm Stone. And I spent an hour with him and talked about his childhood and his early career. And now I'm like, dang, how lame am I for judging him and putting him in that category for 30 years? I'm the asshole. So that's why I think it's really imperative that you're not afraid to kind of dig deeper and really open yourself up to not only being surprised by your guests, but eliminating and taking away a lot of those judgments and a lot of the things that maybe you hold on to and have held on to through life, and putting that stuff aside and building that storyline. So getting back to the subject, or what you were saying, Jodina, that in this case, I knew that I wanted to talk to Greg and do the arc and start from the beginning and to the end. And that's how I usually handle kind of interview podcasts, is by the first act is establishing who they are. Here are your accomplishments. You ran Stone Brewing. You now live in Kauai full time, or Maui, and you're involved in this metal project. Okay, we just established where you are today. Now let's hit that second act and spend the majority of the talk and conversation talking about the stuff I was saying earlier. Where are you from? How you got here? What was your relationship like with your dad? How about your mom? What were your relationship like with your friends? What kind of music did you listen to? Where'd you go to college? What made you change and go into this direction? How did you end up in San Diego? That became the meat of the whole conversation. But within that meat, there was also moments of philosophy, and him sharing personal feelings about life and spirituality, or whatever the case is. And then it ended with the wrap up. All right, here we go. Where is this going? You're going to take this project live? What's holding you back from going live? So you kind of know when you set that tone that it's now time to fade out the conversation. And it gets just wrapped up in one kind of beautiful bow that you didn't really anticipate seeing happening, but it just does. I just interviewed Kyle Mooney from SNL recently. It was the same thing. It's like, I didn't ask him one question about Saturday Night Live. Not one. I was only on with him for a half hour, granted, but, I spoke to him for a half hour, and it was all about his childhood, growing up in Scripps Ranch, going to Scripps Ranch High, and then me talking about this new record he released and trying to break him down to talk about, why were you so insecure in high school? What was your trip? And hearing that he felt less than, or he felt like he was, he wrote about a character called Mr. Disease or something, because everyone thought he had a disease because no one wanted to go around him. And I'm like, well, was that you? And, there's this big long pause and, the whole deal. And you go through that process of kind of breaking down somebody. So I put that out, and I had a bunch of friends text me going, dude, I had no idea Kyle Mooney was like that. And that's just an example of, I guess, breaking down and trying to go deeper than what everybody is used to consuming. I can't even look at Instagram anymore because it's all the same.
it's just be different, I guess, is kind of what I'm saying, you know, and don't be afraid to be different. Find inspiration in others. I mean, I find my inspiration, there's a guy who podcasts, he's been around forever, but does anyone know Mark Maron?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's been around forever. To me, he's the quintessential, when it comes to interviewing people, I don't know many people who do it better than Mark Maron. And he's always been a guide for me when it comes to being a good interviewer. Because he's an example of, when I was making the statement about Rogan or Carolla, and I love these guys, it's when I said, I know what they're doing, I'm not saying I love what they say, I'm saying I'm not here to disparage anyone, but it's just, they're doing shows, they're entertainers. And I look at someone like Maron as somebody who's doing the work. He's really doing the work. And that's what I think a lot of, when it comes to podcasting, it really is an intimate medium. And you got to do the work because you've got a really captive audience. You're stuck in their little earbuds. And that's how I used to feel when I was in the radio. And I used to beat myself up so much. I would never listen to myself on the radio. I just hated myself on the radio. There were elements I liked, but I guess my point is, it's just like, I can't hear the sound of your own voice. But it wasn't even that. It was more, I felt like I was of service to others, and I was always afraid I was letting them down. Or because I had this captive audience, I never wanted to take advantage of it. And you have that captive audience, and that's why I say you always mature and nurture your audience, because I think that's really, for me, where it starts, and putting that audience first, and then on the cultural side, just really not being too linear, just really being open to other cultures and philosophies and embracing what we have around us. Because here in San Diego, it's what's always attracted me to this city is, the diversity of this town and the community. And I think podcasting is a great way to celebrate diversity, build community. And that's all I got.
Perfect.
I hope that was okay. Did I chase somebody out of the room?
No, he had to go to another class.
All right, I was going to give him a hug.
So stay up here, and we're going to have, I don't know if you guys want to stand or how we want to open this up. We have 30 minutes for questions, and I know a lot of you have many questions. We have multiple mics, by the way. So, here.
I just want to say something.
Oh, yeah. I'm all sweaty, bro.
Chris is the voice of my youth. Dude, I grew up crossing the border fucking.
I love that.
So, yeah. That was my youth, my coming of age.
Yeah, I used to play rock and Espanol on 91X back in the day. Cafe Tacuba, it's my favorite band, man. Anyway, no, I appreciate that. And I love the work you guys are doing. Like I said earlier, I think it's awesome.
All right. Questions? Yes.
So, this is a question for Chris. Do you listen to any local podcasters?
Everybody up on stage here. How good am I?
Other than those people who are up on stage, sharing the stage with any other ones?
It's a good question. I list the ones I produce. I mean, that's a lame ass answer, but yeah, there's not. And I'm not kidding, I do appreciate and love what everybody up here is doing. So it does sound like a cop-out answer, and I've heard all their podcasts, but I also have a lot of friends at KBBS that I love and adore. So I support the mission. But I don't, not a lot. I'd love, if you have suggestions, it's not because I'm anti-local podcasts, it's just I get inundated with a lot of media. And, there's some I like for sure, but it usually comes in the form of like music and art and stuff like that. But my answer should inspire you, if anything.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
No,
I wish I had a better answer than that.
That's okay. No, I listen to a couple locals.
Who do you listen to?
The one that I like a lot and I listen to weekly is JV to the Pros.
JV to the Pros?
Yes.
And who hosts that?
Jack Vecchio.
Okay. Sports? It's a sports podcast, obvious?
It's everything.
Everything.
He is a local actor.
Local actor.
He does voiceovers. He's very much into sports.
How cool.
And he's representing the U.S. in Amsterdam this summer.
Okay.
Baseball.
Yeah. Anyone else you would recommend?
I mean, that's one of some other ones about just mental health and also fitness.
Very cool. That's awesome.
Okay, I know Amy has a list. As a matter of fact, yeah, you want to give Amy the microphone over here? Let's give Amy the mic.
I was just wondering what kind of pre-interview questions you ask before you do an interview.
I mean, I was just doing something like that. Yeah, so basically is if part of pre-production is that pretty much getting all the material ready, and some of them is you ask is that shoot the line or the story you want to talk about. So if you want to talk about a professor who's doing a cross-border graduation, ask him about, hey, maybe tell me about how the idea came about. So all the questions that you would ask, so you kind of ask them first to kind of like filter their answer and see where the story goes. Does that answer your question?
So you have like a meeting?
Yeah, so you have a previous meeting, like a phone call.
Okay.
Say, go.
It's just a pre-interview is just a fancy way of saying just have a conversation with them so you know what you want to ask them on in the studio. You know, just get to know this person and who they are. That way you can make some more. You're like, oh, if I only have an hour in the studio, okay, now I know exactly what I want to ask, rather than getting to know them in the studio.
Yeah.
And I actually have a love-hate relationship with the pre-interview. Like, sometimes I feel like it takes a lot of the spark out of it.
Mm-hmm.
It takes some of the discovery out of the conversation, but like you cannot deny how much it helps sometimes, especially if you're going out of your comfort zone or if it's something that you're not an expert in yourself, to figure out what they know so you don't ask them a question where they're like, I got nothing. You know, so that way you can keep the conversation flowing. So it's really good sometimes, you know, like Anthony will do a pre-interview in our workflow, and you know, he gets that sense in advance of what the person knows and what they can speak to and where we can take the conversation without like drilling that spark.
Just wanted to add to that is that I do my pre-interview when I'm about to do the podcast, so like it's at the same time, and I just want to know, like, is there anything for my role? It's like, is there anything you want to promote and specifically talk about? So at least I'm getting an idea of where to take the conversation. And then I also say, is there anything that you really love talking about? Those are just kind of the two things that are really helpful, because then it helps kind of honor their time too.
Yeah, it's interesting. I agree with what you were saying as far as I try to be really wary of asking too many pre-interview questions, because I agree that I like to have a moment of surprise and kind of catch people off guard so they can't premeditate some of the questions. But I was also going to say, more than pre-interviewing or asking what we're going to talk about, I usually lead with what don't you want to talk about, because I could go down roads that make a lot of people uncomfortable. And so I like to establish that on the front end, just using the Greg Cook stone analogy I used earlier. Yo, Greg, anything you want to talk about? I don't want to talk about selling to Sapporo. Fair enough. So we didn't talk about it. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, Tasha's question, I'll go back to you.
Yeah. What do you think is a popular subject we can talk about in podcast that might interest people?
Whatever you like. A podcast for everybody is a podcast for nobody. The shit that you like and talk about what you like and just about the passion is something that you will find folks that will resonate with that. So believe it, like Chris said, believe in yourself and what you do and what you like, and just double down.
You said that. You said that.
Exactly.
I wanted to see, take your opinion on that.
I think
what do you think is
you
the
can
most
talk about
popular?
knitting, you can talk about underwater freaking, like, whatever it is, there's a niche for it. You just have to love it. That's it. You just have to love it.
Yeah, I was just going to add, totally agree. And what's nice is about a podcast, again, I'll do the thing, right? So if you find yourself talking about something kind of more and more and more, and you want to niche it down, you can always start a second podcast. So I did that. I was talking about dating a lot because I was doing a dating challenge. So I started a dating experiment podcast. And I have 10 episodes, and then I was like, okay, I'm done with this, and it was done. So it just kind of like gives you an opportunity to just explore yourself while you're getting to meet people and following, going back to your words, your own inner guidance of what you're doing.
Guidance what you want to be. Maybe you can guide people what they want to be.
I think
How can they be themselves?
Right. I think even if it's not niche, because I have a lot of students that come up to me like, oh, I like music and I like movies, and well, there's endless podcasts that do that, right? So one thing I tell them is, what perspective do you bring personally? You know, everyone's doing movies, everyone's doing music, but what can you say about the subject? What can you bring to the table? I think that's what's really important if you want to go a bit more broader instead of really niche.
Okay, Erica's got a question here.
So I don't know if I need the mic, I'm pretty loud, but I just have a question about, you guys are talking a lot about interview podcasts, but what do you think about someone just talking? If that format works, or is that boring, or but if someone's dynamic enough, so what's your take on the interview format versus a single person talking?
I think it totally, if it was Chris talking, I would listen to it. I think it just totally depends on how you communicate, you know what I mean? I think it can definitely work. I like people who can do it, but it's definitely not an easy
road to take because you have nothing but your own mind, you know, like you at least with an interview with a partner, you have something to bounce off of. By yourself, it's tough, but there's definitely people who can do it very well.
And you can also do both. So I do, it's like a soul, I actually prefer interview because it helps me stay motivated, because when I have someone there, it's about them now, right? It gets me out of my head quicker. But there are times when I'm in my car and I'm just sitting there and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna talk about how I'm feeling. And then sometimes I never use it. It's just me, just random thoughts, just kind of like exploring that make no sense to a normal person. But there are other times that I'm like, oh, okay, whatever, and then I publish it. So there's also the freedom of, especially until you're getting paid, you know, for podcasting, that you could just kind of like, just explore what you even like doing too.
Hey, Jamie. Regina? Good to see you guys. Right, so I have a question for Chris and Stacy. You both mentioned that you work with podcasters on getting going. And I'm wondering what your services include and whether they, whether the approaches are even transferable to radio. Because quite frankly, I'm more interested in doing like a radio, even a 5-segment radio show or a limited series, as opposed to just specifically a podcast.
I missed the first part of your question, I'm sorry.
So Chris and Stacy both said that they work with podcasters on getting going. So I'm wondering what their process is, what it includes, and is it transferable to doing like limited series radio shows?
Yes, so I have a podcast workshop, and you guys have access to it if you'd like. I don't know how to get it to you, but I give you a coupon. That's how I work. I basically, after the challenge, I ran this challenge. It was 5 weeks, 200 people were in it, and then I helped them all start their podcasts. Then I kind of like got to see where they got stuck, and then I ended up condensing it down to like a 6-hour day where I'm like, okay, now I'm gonna help a bunch of people start their podcasts in a day, and then I got to see where they got stuck. And now I have an hour and 15-minute workshop that you guys can have for free. Since we're here, and that's actually, so that's what I do, is that's the only way that I help people is that, and then I have a Find Your Voice challenge that you guys can also have access to if you email me, but yeah, that also helps people. So I'm a starter, that's what I do, I help people start, and I love, I'm so glad you're here, because you're modeling, like you get to just be you and just have fun, and that's what's gonna pull your people in, and that's the whole key of all of this, right? So that's just, I don't know if that answers your question, but my way of helping people is this workshop, and then I have a Find Your Voice challenge.
Yeah, you stole mine. I swear, I was gonna say find your voice. That's what I do with people. I believe anyone can be a podcaster. I just help that person find their voice. And it's so fun for me, because I was on the radio for years and I suffered from mad mad. I was at 91X just because it was brought up. I just keep bringing that back. I'm sorry, I'm really not stuck in that past, but using that as a point of reference, I was there for 11 years, and the first 5 I had imposter syndrome. Didn't think I should be on a mic, thought I sucked, thought I didn't belong there, and it was all based on, just those voices in your head, and not being able to find my voice. And then once I found my voice, like, I can't listen to tapes from the first 5 years. I literally have a different octave. I talk a lot higher and really fast, super high, And then I found my voice, and it got easy, and it became second nature. So that's what I like doing. And if you want, I've said this, I've been to Jodina's classes before. I'll give you my phone number, I'll give you my Insta or whatever, and if you ever have questions, I have some of our old students text me still, or current students, I don't know, but I'm happy to answer the phone or help you find your voice. It's just something I like doing. As far as the radio portion of it, they're really 2 different worlds, I've got to be honest with you. When you're on the radio's a drug, and a lot of people don't realize that. Radio's a drug because you're live, and when you're live and you don't know what's going to happen in a live moment, you're getting serotonin hits like you wouldn't believe. And once those serotonin hits stop and you no longer do live shows, some people fall into depressions, don't even know what their voice is anymore, and it's really, really important to separate and know that when you're in podcasting, it's not live. So you have the freedom of just kind of really finding your voice, massaging it, marinating on your content. And when you're on the radio, it's just like having a gun to your head and you have to perform. But you get addicted to that. But it's
radio programs that are aren't there radio programs that are pre-recorded? I think your
tons, and that's
on the KPBS schedule, right?
Yeah, there are
I'm talking
pre-recorded.
about that kind of
Okay, pre-recorded shows, and you can produce your shows and have all the time in the world. There's absolutely a transition. But going from podcasting in a studio podcast environment right into a radio studio, it's 2 different worlds. But what you're talking about, 1,000,000%, and you should, and I'm happy to help you.
Thank you.
Okay. Got some up here. Let's go up here.
Hello. Okay. My question is generally for everybody, but in terms of a podcast, pre-production and even during production, what are your guys' don'ts or pet peeves or just things that are like if you're thinking of doing a podcast and you're doing this, please don't do it.
Just down the line then. Just make sure your vocal mics are great. Honestly, just make sure your voice sounds good. And it's not a heavy lift. You can get a Shure mic for $99 that'll sound like $1,000,000. And just really be cognizant, just really pay attention to your vocal audio and know your way around some of the production software like Audition or Pro Tools or whatever you use, and just know how to dial in your voice. Make sure you have enough bass in there.
Yeah, I didn't have anything to say, but just to echo what some people said on stage before, I think having an idea of where you're going, like not going in blind, but at the same time, it's like almost more important to be very open to having it change. Because if you go very rigid, like, oh, I'm gonna ask him these questions, and this is where the story's gonna go, then you're not telling a true story. You gotta also be open to like having the story tell you where it wants to go. Like definitely you build your map, but also be willing to take detours, and you don't know where you're gonna end up. It might be way better.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the lessons in documentary filmmaking is let the story surprise you. So you go out with your plan, but let the magic play itself out of it. So what do I mean? Have your questions there, ask him, and then sometimes you ask him, how does that make you feel? What do you think? And that might give you a much more deeper answer that you won't expect. So the art of asking questions is something that we're all trying to get better at. And that itself is what almost always will lead you to better answers for your interviews so that you can craft the story a bit better. in terms of, say, we want to put stories? Yeah.
Definitely be open to working collaboratively, especially if you're working with a team. Don't be afraid to ask for advice or taking criticism also, I think, is really important. I think kind of putting yourself out there, especially because it might be your own voice. It's a very intimate kind of thing. It can be a little scary for some people, but don't be afraid to like show your mom or your friends or whoever, like, what do you think of this? Or, they're the general audience of like who might be interested in listening. So kind of be open to doing that.
So my advice is going to be off of the first 10 episodes because we're doing a practice podcast. And so no pre, no post, just record. And no editing either. And then when you hit the 10 episodes, you decide, do I want to keep this podcast and keep it going? Or do I want to start a new one? And then you can decide to do that. So that would be my biggest piece of advice is just remember just to, you don't even need a mic for the first 10 episodes. Just play with it and have fun. And then you get to see what happened. When I mentioned that's what I did in the podcast challenge where it was like a practice podcast, the majority of them kept that podcast going. And then what was cool is they got to see the journey. Their listeners got to see the journey of them starting the podcast, which made it really special and makes people love it even more.
Well, maybe this is like for further down the line once you've kind of gotten used to making a podcast. But I like what Chris said about respecting your audience. I think that's very important, or paying attention to your audience. I think one of the things that bothers me is just very, very long podcasts that have a lot of things that can come out, but that's probably me projecting because what I normally do is make things way too long. So I've gotten good over the years, much better at cutting out, what doesn't need to be there, and that makes it a lot better ultimately in the end. I think one of my journalism professors said, cut the good and keep the great.
That's a great one. He's right.
Don't fall in love with the ingredients.
I feel like they're really, when you think about rules for podcasts or things that bother you, I feel like there just aren't any rules. I've read this whole list of things you can only use the car starting sound once in your career and don't do it again. Or I think back to, I came to this career through fiction writing first, and one of the things I always made a point of was never have a character leave a room, especially in short fiction. You want the economy of what's happening, but you know what? Sometimes it's really great to just see the thing that you're always avoiding and just do it. Have something that you would otherwise think breaks the rule, just have it in one episode, whatever. So yeah, no pet peeves here. It's all fine.
For the love of God, please make sure that you hit the record button because bring extra batteries, and that's the best advice I can give you.
Believe me, it has happened a lot of times that I'm 30 minutes into the interview and I'm like, fuck, I didn't hit the record button. That is horrible. It has happened to me twice.
Yeah, saw some other hands.
Saw some other hands up here. Let's see, look at you.
I don't do that.
Okay.
Hi, hello, thanks for coming. A question that I have that I hope I'm not the only one who struggles with, as was mentioned in one of your slides, we're in challenging times. This is our opportunity to have a voice to speak to the things that are happening around us. How do you find the balance between doing something fun or not fun, that's the wrong word, but doing something that's a little silly or a little less serious? And on the other side of that spectrum, how do you properly use your channel without making yourself seem just like a doom spiral podcast?
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, that's something as writer for and main writer for the show. I write for two different voices, right? And so Natalie's Natalie, so that means I have to know Natalie and Alan and how they react to certain things. So try to see them and so how they react. So there is a journalistic objective that we have, and so. But I always try to make sure that I incorporate their voice, not just their voice, but Adrian's voice and my voice as well. Because we don't get any screen time usually. But when we tell that story, that tells, I guess they call it breaking the third wall. So trying to tell how the story itself is made, and for instance, at some points, I kind of record myself and missing hitting the record button. And I just say, hey, dude, and actually what I include is actually mentioned, and what I include in the episode is, hey, can you read that because I forgot to hit the record button. So it's just, people see that and resonate that because everybody fucks up when they're doing their job. And so that's sort of the elements that kind of add a little bit of the cherry on top that makes your story not just journalistic, but also just have that sort of element that is human. Yeah, it's very human. So it's a fine line because, I mean, I like to write some of the jokes, and sometimes my editor says, hey, dial it back a bit, because that's too many jokes there. But yeah, that's pretty much just seeing the balance, listening afterwards to see how it sounds. Like you say, oh, that's just too many jokes, or maybe I should just cut this out. So yeah, it's just, you are your editor and you are your best judge.
I think that for me, it's like, I don't know if this is exactly going to answer your question, but this is what's coming up for me, so I'm just going to say it. But it's following your curiosity of like what you actually like care about. So if you listen to my first, I think like 80 episodes, that was the year I had like my hardest year. I was going through this identity crisis and all these things. And so, but I never talked about it. I actually was interviewing people around it. So you can almost see the journey through the people that I interviewed. And so I just followed my curiosity, and then I also had fun with it, and that's when I did the dating challenge, and then that spun out in a whole other place. That's why I started that whole other podcast. And then the other thing actually was like you, Chris, where I like stopped my podcast for a little bit. Because once I identified the formula that I was looking for as I was interviewing people, and then I tested it and it worked, and then I did the TEDx talk, I was like, I'm not interested, in this anymore. Like there was no purpose for me. But then I started dissecting the comfort circle framework, where I have a whole kind of way that I've been able to help people move past their stuff. And once I then started exploring that, now I'm like really excited about my podcast again. And so it comes with having a purpose, and then also curiosity, and just like let yourself play with that.
I mean, I was gonna say, I think what you're asking is something that we think about a lot, and we talk about a lot in like a newsroom situation where we have programming that's lighter, but we also are covering the news. It's like audiences are, like it's proven that audiences are just not wanting to see bad news anymore. And it's like, how do we fill in, how do we like provide that service and give them a positive story, or give them something that is outside of the news cycle a little bit, while also being, sorry Chris, but like authentic? Because like we can talk like about this musician who has a great story, but also like Spotify's ripping them off, and we have to talk about the bad stuff. And sometimes you do have to be it like makes a little bit of doom spiraling into it just to be real. Because I think after a while, when you have too many good like happy stories, you start to feel like
disingenuous.
Yeah, yes, exactly, very good. So finding balance.
Yeah, it's like you don't want to avoid that stuff, but the audience is not going to want to be depressed for 30 minutes. We saw Ira Glass talk a few months ago from This American Life, which is all-time great narrative podcast. But there was a very cool like little tip thing that he had in there that I've been thinking about since, which is like a narrative structure that he named after Fiddler on the Roof, but I've never seen that, but I guess it mirrors it, which is like start with something funny, and then work your way towards the serious thing.
Yep.
So whether it's funny or just light or just something more approachable, that can be a way to kind of get people engaged and hooked and comfortable, and then you work your way towards the dark, reality stuff.
Yes.
Go ahead. And then you Fiddler on the Roof, by the way. I've seen it. Yeah.
I need to see it.
Okay, I'm going to cut you off on that one because I'm sorry, you have something?
No, just to add on to that, like I also feel like we're motivated by solutions journalism as well, and like you want to not just leave the listener with doom or like feeling helpless, but offer or like provide a way to think about hope or what they can do to change something, or how they can just do something differently, or what they can take from the episode. So like you scripted something recently in your outline that was like hopeful note at the end. So yeah.
Yeah, the thing I was just going to add quickly here, Jodine, if it's okay, is if you are going to go down that road, be fearless about it. Because if you start acting nervous because you're hitting a heavy subject, your audience is going to look at you as being less than authentic. They're going to think that this isn't your true conviction, you're not feeling this way, you're nervous, you're dancing around it, but you want to ask it. If you're going for it, you got to go for it. And if you're going to pick a side, you're going to have to pick a side and stay in that lane. Because in the world that we live in today, this is a very unpopular thing, I might say, but you go in there and attacking Trump, you lose half your audience. You go in there and you're attacking Biden or Kamala, you lose half your audience. So it's a really interesting dynamic when it comes to politics, because I've been called it all. And it's what's hysterical is from both sides. So if you're going to dance in that arena, get ready to play ball, because there are people waiting, just literally salivating to get into your comment feeds. So that's why I never discuss politics.
So we have 5 more minutes. I've got Gail, and I know that Amy has another question. I have some technical questions and copyright questions about music, and some of you were talking about how you don't need Adobe Audition. I just wanted to touch on that briefly. Who else? We've got Gail. I've got Amy. Amy has a couple, and Taj. So, and Zeb. Okay, so Gail first.
Have a good day.
Thank you, Jordina. First off, I want to say this has been an excellent round of applause for everybody out there. Thank you for putting this together. My name is Gail Strickland. I produce a travel show. And I'm curious if your podcast is normally in a studio. Are you ever out in the field getting man on the street interviews and bringing them in, adding to it? I'm just curious about this because I think some of our best interviews have been on the seat of our pants.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the work that you're doing is like a mixture of being out in the field, seat of the pants, and then like studio interviews for when we know we just want really good sound. That's when we will bring somebody into the studio. So it all depends on what you're looking for.
Okay, and then Amy, you had a couple questions about music license. Did I said Gail and then Amy?
Let me just answer your question. So I have in our show a one rule: no studio whatsoever. We try to do everything on the field.
Out in the field.
Yeah, I mean we just feel like it's better ambience to capture what's going on out there. But sometimes we do in studio interviews, but those are more rare than actually doing recording outside. We do the tracking inside the studio for the hosts,
right?
But like the main bulk of the interviews is in the setting with the sources.
And you're going to talk about audio and editing, right?
We want to ask a couple questions about music and some other programs too, and then we have some more questions too. Okay. Yeah, ask your music question though, licensing.
So I host a music podcast, and I've been getting kind of stuck with the whole licensing piece. So I was wondering, and I don't know if anyone knows, but just what license I would need to play commercial music.
Right now, I'm going through so many copyright strikes. You have no idea. Shit from 5 years ago where I wasn't even working. Especially with Spotify, because Spotify has the cash to fund algorithms and just ran through every single thing. I don't know if the rest of the shows have been copyright stricken lately by Spotify, but yes. So you can get a license with, say, a catalog like Universal Music, which KBS does have. There's also copyright-free stuff on say, if you have an Adobe license subscription. There's also free stuff on YouTube that you can just basically say, copy-free music. If you're trying to use a piece of music online, what we've done in, say, you want to talk about a music song, Lady Gaga, is what we grab a concert song, layer a bit of grain so it doesn't trigger the algorithm. Then we don't get a copyright strike. So there's a little bit of a technique there, just like some YouTubers do. When they put in video, picture in picture, and they put some grain or they change the pace, they tell you the pitch. Yeah, there's a little bit of that. But the copyright, so was it what is it? It's ¿cómo se llama? No, the fucking, sorry. The fair use laws, yeah, it's basically 10 seconds if you're doing criticism or commenting or some sort of writing a story and mentioning that, that's fair use. You'll still get copyright stricken, but there's Spotify has the options to select whether you use it. If you got a license to use it, if you're just commenting on it, not. Yeah.
You specifically mentioned the name of the song and you're talking about it, you should be able to use it under fair use. And like, sometimes I put like a little bit of reverb on it, which is what they're talking about, which prevents it from automatically being like found. But fair use is like confusing and no one really agrees what it really means. But if you're talking about it, you should.
This is a disclaimer, we're not copyright lawyers, so take it with a grain of salt.
Exactly, but this is the techniques that we use just to avoid that.
Did you have another technical question, since you got the microphone?
Yeah, if it's a music show and you gotta cite the music, I defer to what everybody else said. But if it's not a music show and you want to play your favorite song, I just say don't, and reach out to a local musician and use their music and cite and credit them.
I've also started interviewing people in the industry, and I find editing really difficult to keep it all in sync when I'm cutting things. So do you have any hacks for how to quickly and easily edit interviews?
That's great. We use the script, and it's a wonderful tool. You don't do much sound design with it, you sort of prepare text of it. So you lay import the audio, and you see what the questions are at, and you cut and paste from there. So there are more tools available that are not so, you don't depend on you being very, very savvy on say things like Pro Tools or Audition or what's the other one? Like Ableton, yeah. And so, there's that stuff out there. More and more stuff out there because the market's big.
This year there's a lot of AI coming that really, I just saw a video, it was crazy, it edited an interview, like took out all the ums, all the things, and chose like the actual best meaty parts of the interview. It was wild.
That's freaky.
Yeah, it was really crazy.
Our job's on stage.
And I think that's just the beginning.
That's so scary hearing that.
And I'm old school and I won't post anything without listening through the whole thing. And I do hit the speed and listen back at like 2 or 3 times speed, so I can at least take a 45-minute podcast and cut it down to 20 something. But that's, I'm old school that way and just whatever.
Learn your software. Yeah, just learn your software too. What specifically are you using? Audition. There's a lot of good resources. Just
that's true.
YouTube. I mean, really, like, just take the time to really like play with it. And even if you mess up, you can always undo it or whatever it may be. But that's probably the best thing you could do. Just have a specific question, just research and see who's talking about that.
The other thing I just wanted to add is when you do a podcast, you get amazing content from it. I use something called Capshow, and it pulls out like a year's worth of content. So if you wanted to do like a Substack or a Medium or just post wherever, it pulls it all out from the interview, which is really great.
Thank you so much for being here. I was wondering, what are the steps if for somebody who wants to start a podcast? Like record some episodes and then what? Post on Spotify or what are the steps?
Yeah, so I use Callcast. It's free to use. It's a very like kind of beginner platform, but I still have my podcast on there, 350 episodes on there. So you're just basically going on Zoom, you hit record, or you do it on your phone on a voice message. You record the episodes, and when you're ready, you upload them to the platform, and you just need 3 episodes, and then once you have that, you can publish it. If you want, I can email you. I have a whole instructions.
I would love that.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
thanks.
Yeah, it's very simple. It's like a 4-step process. Once you publish it once, it goes to everything. It streams everywhere. And then then all you do is you publish it, and it constantly just goes. It's like one click, so it's really easy and really fun.
Or just YouTube, right? Upload it, it's free, and just do that. And create a community, share it with your friends, share it with family, and do Instagram and create a reel about it, create posts, like create content around it. So that's the other half of it. Like you're making a podcast, but also creating content. We do a lot of, funny posts on our Instagram and just things on the side. Do things to like promote your show because you're going to be wearing multiple hats when you do this. So you want to make sure to cover all your bases and make sure the show gets heard by people. So I do that.
There are like platforms like the ones that use like Stream Guys that pretty much create a pipeline for all these big podcasters out there. And so they organize your material and they just send it out. And so those are considerable if you have the budget, of course. If not, YouTube, SoundCloud's still a big one. Spotify, there's Rules and Guidelines, Blueberry, all these sorts of podcasters.
Yeah, the thing I like about hosting on Spotify is I just have this added, and I'm not a Spotify fan by any means, but if they're the guards, utilize their software because maybe they're going to give it more attention. Like, when people get on TikTok, musicians will use the TikTok platform Sound On instead of like DistroKid because they know it's TikTok and TikTok is going to push the TikTok artists harder than the third parties. So they give you free tools, and if you get something going, sometimes people from Spotify, I've had it happen, will reach out and say, hey, I saw you started a yacht rock show like 5 years ago, this was. And they were like, we highlighted in our best ofs and stuff like that. So just to throw that in there as an idea. I don't know if it's good or not.
Just keep it simple. I can see
Keep it
it
simple.
Just
Keep it simple.
the iPhone's the best. You can just plug in a microphone, record something.
You can always get more complicated, but just start. If you feel like starting it, just start it and you'll figure it out as you go.
Okay, we have one last question that we need to let them go because you guys have spent your afternoon and I can't thank you enough. I'm going to turn it for one last question with Tosh.
Thank you. How do you become confident about what you are doing? Is there a tip or an advice that you can give us?
Best advice I ever got when I first started in radio before I signed on, I would take 3 deep breaths, 5 on the way in through the nose, 7 on the way out through the mouth. And I would do that before I cracked the mic every single time for 20-something years. I took 3 deep breaths and with a longer exhale. So that's my little nugget.
I think that's the most brilliant. I mean, the body's way more powerful than your mind. If you can balance your body, you can find confidence. I think also just, honestly, there's no cheap fix for you. Just have to do it over and over. Think about it. He did it. He said the first 5 years he was like he didn't think he belonged. That's 5 years of doing it almost every day. Like there's just no way but just doing it. And if you believe in it, you're just gonna have to accept that you'll go through moments of darkness and self-doubt, and that will give you confidence that you're going through those.
Yep.
And you continue making it.
Use NLP. You can program your brain to affect your emotions.
There you go.
There you go. Yeah, just set yourself some achievable goals. Today I'm going to record this. And then you'll find yourself finding a quick success, a quick serotonin bump, and then keep going. Just set yourself a list of achievable things. Putting an episode together is hard work, and can be daunting. You think of a season as well, but if you start with the small things, step by step.
Just don't listen to the haters and keep doing what you do. Just stay true to yourself.
This is really for anything you guys want to do, but I always say either join a group or start a group. So finding other people that are wanting to start podcasts and then just being in that one safe space where like no one else can hear what you're doing, but each other, so you have a built-in audience. And then as you get comfortable, then you get to decide, okay, now I'm ready to publish it. And that helps you get more confident because you're getting to know yourself while you're doing the thing.
This is something I learned in my public speaking also, is like nobody out there wants me to fail. Like everybody's rooting for me. Like, when you're listening to someone and they mess up, you're never mad, right? You just kind of like feel bad for them and you want the best. You want the person to recover. And like that's how I have to remind myself of that before I speak in front of the crowd or before I do any creative project too. Is like people want the best for me who are listening. So and it helps. It like instills that mindset. So.
Motivate.
No one wants me to fail. And there might be like 1 or 2 people.
They are jealous, probably.
I don't think you ever get confident enough. I'm not confident enough, but I'm very good at telling the voices in my head to shut the F up. Just like, shut up. Just, yeah, shut up. Just telling your imposter syndrome to shut up. I don't really believe that there's a day when you become like so confident that you're not scared of anything. I'm always scared of everything. So I just make sure, I'm super anxious. I get depressed a lot. I just make sure that I tell the voices in my head to shut up. Just shut the fuck up.
Yeah, don't believe the voice. I agree with everything you're saying there. And I even had people in my earlier career tell me on that note, and I didn't believe them either, but it's true, that you could be just throwing names out. Howard Stern, David Letterman, Kimmel, whoever. And once if you lose that nervousness, there's an adage out there that you're no longer really in it. And it's actually healthy to feel that. So if you feel it, don't let it shut you down. And last thing I wanted to say too, you should do another one of these and talk monetization in video. So
I totally want that. And you guys, with that, that's a wrap for PodFest City 2025. But we're going to do this again next year, and I cannot thank all of you for joining us again. Thank you so much.
He wants to pay, Mr. Lawyer.